God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'm an alcoholic and a member of the Bottom Line. My name's Doug. We'd like to welcome anyone here for their first AA meeting ever, or visiting from out of town, or coming back, or here at the Bottom Line group for the first time. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us which one of those categories you may or may not fall into? Nope. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any religious sect, denomination, politics, organization, institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety, and we're going to need a volunteer to read the first step, which would be more about alcoholism. Who wants to read more about alcoholism?
I'll get out of there. Most of us are willing to admit we were alcoholics and calm. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it is not surprising that drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove you can drink like other people. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy the drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this we learn alcohol the present time. In some instances, there has been brief recovery, followed always by a still worse relapse. Physicians who are familiar with alcoholism agree there is no such thing as making a normal drinker out of an alcoholic. Science may one day accomplish this, but it hasn't done so yet.
All right, we need an appointed volunteer to read the 12 traditions from the wall hanging.
12 traditions of AA. Number 1, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God, as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible for those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need to always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. And 12, anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thanks, George.
You're welcome, Tom.
Nachos gracias. Now, in accordance with that third tradition, which I'm going to, the seventh tradition, which I'm going to spare you a second reading of, we're going to pass the baskets and get your money. We need a volunteer to read the secretary's report.
My name's Brian. I'm not Hey, Brian. Bottom Line Group Secretary's report. Welcome to Bottom Line Group, especially newcomers. You are the most important person in this group. If you'd like to become a member of this group, please write your name in the white book on the desk, and you can go on issues concerning this group. The next meeting is held on the first Sunday. There's all Sunday. Is there anyone willing to be a temporary sponsor? Please raise your hand and keep it up. But if you need a sponsor, these are the people you should get with after.
All right. This is the Thursday night Big Book meeting. We are in the chapter Working with Others. We're on page 91, about a second full paragraph from the top. A small paragraph, when your man is better, the doctor. What's that? 91. Page 91, the chapter Working with Others. The second paragraph down from the top, when your man is better. To recap where we were the last week, we've learned that the whole reason for the first 11 steps is step 12. That why you make an inventory in step 4. Why do you have the spiritual solutions in 5 of admission, of forgiveness in 6 and 7, making amends in steps 8 and 9 to be free of the most common manifestations of self. What this is all about is to bring us to become a person who does things for other people, and doesn't come up with an excuse when someone asks you for sponsor. Actually, you know what? My experience with sponsorship has been that most people really don't go after sponsees. They'll just sit in a meeting and wait for somebody to say, "Will you help me through the steps?" And that, I think, may be one of the reasons why so many people in AA today. And there's like this, I don't know, when I first got sober 21 years ago, the thing was 3% of you are going to make it. The other 97% ain't going to make it. And I think it's a lot higher. And I think it's like Bill says, it's about 75 to 80% when you take into consideration the fact that he says of those who come in here and really try. Not people who come. I mean, if you went to college and sat down and didn't do anything, and never asked the teacher to teach them what they knew, and you never did any of the work involved, you just sat there and didn't do anything, would you say that you actually went to college, or would you say that you had to go there and actually do the work and turn in, get the grades and pass those courses? It's the same thing with AA. You can't just come in here and sit there and say, "Well, I tried the AA thing and it just didn't work for me." So the category, the I don't know what you'd call it, the description of people who come in here and really try is what he's saying. Those who come in here and really try, 75 to 80% sober up right away. I think he said 50%. No, wait a minute. I hate misquoting. It's in the, I think the foreword to the first edition. Blah, blah. Described in the blah, blah, blah. It's not there. Anyway, I don't have it marked. It's not in the doctor's opinion, I know. Those who come into AA and really tried. Now I lost it. What? Excess? What? I can't understand you. Really? XX. You must be better than me at this thing, huh? Yeah, you're right, isn't it? Yeah, I still don't see. Anyway, the point is that I think that the reason why so many people don't make it is that they don't do the 12th step. They say, I'm working a program of recovery, but it's 12 steps of recovery. And the 12 steps says that you help other people through the 12 steps. We're in the chapter Working with Others. And some of the descriptions that Bill uses in Bill's story, he says that this is an absolute necessity. It's not an absolute necessity that you do the first 11 steps. It's an absolute necessity that you sit down with one other alcoholic and take them through the steps. It's an absolute necessity, and it is imperative. The words that he uses, it is imperative that you work with others as he had worked with me, he said. It's vital to permanent recovery in the foreword to the second edition. Vital to permanent recovery that you sit down with one other alcoholic and help them through the steps. And some of the things that I've heard over the years from the men that I work with through the steps is that, I don't really know the steps, so how can I teach them? Yeah, but nobody ever gets to this point where they're like the master of the 12 steps before they start helping others. You got to start out as someone who just knows a little bit. I'll teach you what I know. I'll do the best I can. And then year after year goes by, maybe a decade goes by, and you become very good at taking people through the 12 steps. it's sort of a catch-22 that I know that a lot of the guys that I work through the steps with put themselves in a position in which they can't help other people until they get a little time and some knowledge about the steps. But guess what? They're not going to get some time and some knowledge about the steps because they're not helping other people. Because Bill Wilson describes it as being an absolute necessity, and it is imperative, and it is vital to permanent recovery. And those are Bill Wilson's words. But here we are, we're in the chapter working with others, and some of the things that we're reading here is that this example that Bill Wilson's given us here, perhaps you're not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, hospitals. They will only be glad to assist you. Nobody does that anymore. Like I said, we sit in an AA meeting and we wait for somebody to walk up and say, "Will you sponsor me?" And see, there's a problem with that, in that people who don't have any time in AA are less likely to be approached for sponsorship. If you say, "I got 6 months of sobriety," and keep in mind, Bill Wilson, the words of the book says that Bill Wilson had worked with dozens of alcoholics in his before he went to Akron and met Dr. Bob, it states that he had worked with dozens of alcoholics. That could be 24. That could be 36, who knows? But he failed to sober any of them up. But he stayed sober himself, it says. And with 6 months of sobriety, he had met Dr. Bob, and Dr. Bob was the first one to get sober. The moral to the story is that if you want to stay sober, you have to work with other people. That's why so many people are not staying sober when they come in here. They come in here and go, "I don't know, man, I keep getting 3 months and I drink, and 6 months and I drink, and there may be something else underlying. Maybe the guy who took them through the 4, 5, 6, and 7, those steps didn't know what he was doing. Maybe they haven't completely done, as he says, the third step is the keystone of the new and triumphant arch through which we walk to freedom. It's a vital and crucial step. The third step is important that you do it properly. I was thinking, same with all the steps. I don't know why anybody would say the first step's the only one you need to work 100%. And Bill wrote that in the 12 and 12, and I think that's one of the worst things he ever did, because it's almost like a free pass to by the time you get out to step 7 and 8, you could be down to 20, 30%. Who cares? Whatever. Just as long as you do that first step 100%. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. It's like it's a free pass to not give it your all in the rest of the steps. And I believe, like he says in the third step, that the third step was a turning point. We asked for his protection and care with complete abandon. Not like when he says half measures availed us nothing. Those are all phrases directing us to the third step. There are like 7 pages, 6.5 pages that are dedicated to step 3, and those words are found in those pages. Half measures availed us nothing is a reference to step 3, not just all the steps, but it's found within the pages of the third step. But anyway, here we are. We're talking about Bill Wilson's working with this guy here. So in the second paragraph down from 91, he says, "When your man is better," this is after he's gone on a bender, and this is the best time to approach somebody after they've gone on a bender, because they have been deflated again, they've been smashed by alcohol again, and they're more receptive and more willing to listen and more eager to do the work involved. That you catch them 3 or 4 or 5 weeks after they've had this deflation, and they're less likely to go, "Okay, I'm going to give it my everything." But when they're like on the ground and they're like feeling like I don't want to do it anymore, they're more likely to be receptive to the ideas. When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed. Being, he just got smashed by alcohol again. See your man alone, if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn to the talk or turn the talk to some phrase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. Now, this is because, the idea that one alcoholic can affect another alcoholic like no non-alcoholic can. And to me, that was in the form of, say, you come across people in your family and they see you down and out and they say, look at you, you're a mess. Pick yourself up, will you? Be a man, step up to the plate and all this. And, if you just put some willpower to it, they don't understand alcoholism. That's why one alcoholic can affect another alcoholic. And the analogy that Bill Wilson gives of the people who have suffered the same common peril, who've been through a shipwreck back in, I think it's There Is a Solution. He says, we are like the people who've been through a shipwreck. We feel as though we have a common bond to one another, that one alcoholic can affect and can help another alcoholic because we've suffered the same common peril. And the shipwreck thing came from, I'm guessing, which was 1912, when there was a lot of shipwrecks back at the time, but everybody knows about the Titanic and the Lusitania, and they go down, and like 1,000 people go down with it. And so that's why he brought up that, because it was, at the time, it was probably like today, it would be in the form of like, I don't know, the oil wars or maybe the space shuttle blowing up or something. To speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. And another thing is, keep in mind that this guy has never been introduced to AA. At this time, there is no AA. When this book was written, Alcoholics Anonymous was in like 3 cities. It was in Akron, it was in New York, and it was in Cleveland. And those were like the only, there was maybe a couple of people in a couple of other cities that weren't really organized yet, but those were like the 3 primary places that this AA was at the time. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. Because that's to moralize and lecture is what he's been getting from the preacher, the doctor, his wife, his family members, his mother and father. They've all been telling him what a piece of dirt he was, and he needs to stop doing this and pick himself up. So if you start doing this, he's just going to, like, a wall comes down. Bam! Oh, another one of these people. Great. If the mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his. And remember, what he's trying to do here is make a connection to the guy, so that he's going to be a little more receptive to and, we don't really have to deal with a lot of this today. Most of the guys I run into have been in and out of AA for years. They know all about, the connection's been made, so... But you got to put yourself in the position of the way this book was written at the time. Remember what it also says about the book was that this book was meant to be your sponsor. It says, though you be but one man with this book in your hand, you may be asking yourself, how could I even hope to have the success that you guys has? And he says something about, you forget you have just tapped a source of power. It's only a matter of willingness to recreate the success that we have had in Akron and New York. And this might be in Butte, Montana with some guy who's, 92. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop, and the struggles you made to stop that failed. Show him how the mental twist that leads to the first drink of a spree, the idea that Dr. Silkworth gave us, that we develop an obsession that it all starts out with an obsession for the first one, and we can somehow convince ourselves that I can do just one again, and I'll stop. Maybe 1 or 2 and stop, but we know for a fact that will not happen, and where that obsession and the insanity of that obsession overwhelms us. The show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. If he is an alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, and there's where a lot of people get that term, a real alcoholic, and I think a lot of people make fun of that because, just to stop for a minute and say, I think it's important, my personal opinion, after 21 years in sobriety, it is important to tell new people that not everybody in AA is as serious as alcoholic as I was. Not everybody who sits in this room and says that they have 10 years of sobriety and they have been coming to AA for 10 years because they don't sponsor anybody and they don't do any of the steps. And they talk about how I've never been through the steps. I don't sponsor anybody. I stayed sober 10 years. Well, I tell you what, pal, you're nothing like me because for me, I am a hopeless variety, and that's one of the words that he uses in one of the other chapters. A hopeless variety alcoholic is someone in which only a spiritual experience will overcome this mental obsession for the first one. And the problem is in AA, and it's just my opinion, it was handed down to me from a couple of old guys a while back. The problem is that a new man comes in here and he's looking around, watching people to see who does what, so that you can either mimic them or don't do what they do or don't do what they do. You don't want to do what the guy who keeps relapsing is doing, and you do want to do what the guy who's been sober for 20 years. So this guy says he's got 10 years of sobriety, and he sponsors no one, doesn't do the steps, so it kind of throws the whole program of AA off out the window, and it's like, just hang around here, you'll sober up. And that gives it half measures availed us nothing. So we tried an easier, softer way. It gives me, in my opinion, it gives me the right to say, well, I can just sit here and do nothing for a few years and see how that works out. And then you drink again and you go, oh, that AA ain't working for me, Yeah, but you never really gave it the what do you say? Those who come to AA and really tried, how many, and what does he say about with all the desperation, the drowning grasp a life preserver? How many people do you see with that desperation coming in here? I tell you, even the people that I see who are nearly going to put a bullet in their head don't come in here and do that. But the point being, now I lost where I was. Oh, I know, I think I see. He will match your inconsistency if you are satisfied he is a real alcoholic. That's what I was getting at, was many people use this term. They say, I am a real alcoholic. And then that gives you the idea, well, there's some people in here who are not real alcoholics. But you see, here's the problem with that term, real alcoholic, is that there are Bill Wilson gives in the chapter to wives, four types of alcoholics. He doesn't mention types, he just says numbers. Suppose your husband is alcoholic number 1. Suppose your husband is alcoholic number 2. And then he goes on and he describes what these alcoholics' behavior is. Number 1 goes on an occasional weekend spree. He's mostly unaffected by alcohol, but does have trouble. Maybe he gets a DUI, a fight with a wife or something. And then he progresses on till you get to alcoholic number 4, in which this guy's sole reason to live is to drink, and that's all he does. He's nearly in the gutter. And then he goes on to say that alcoholic number 1, alcoholic number 2, and number 3 can all stop when things get bad enough. All they do is they say, you know what, things are really bad for me, I am never going to take another drink, and that's it, they stop. And they come in here and say, I got 10 years of sobriety, and I didn't work the steps, and I ain't got no God, and they go on to profess that they were, and see, here's the thing, is they are not like me. There's nothing on that door over there that says the requirement for membership of this bottom line or any of these alcoholic meetings is that you be a hopeless variety alcoholic of the number 4 category, in which only a spiritual experience. And if you're not one of these, you got to hit the road. You're out of here. We've got a guy over there who kicks these people out, but that's not it. People can come in here and say that they're sober 10 years and were not an alcoholic like me, in which my sole reason for living and existence was to drink, and that's all there was to it. It's like the reason I went to work was so I could get money to drink. The reason I had an apartment was because I needed a place to sleep while I was drinking. The reason I had a car, because I had to get to the place where I went to work to make money, so you understand that my whole reason, everything that I did revolved around my drink. Whereas these other people have somewhat of a normal life, okay? But the point that I'm trying to make is that it's important to let people know that if you are a real alcoholic of the hopeless variety, in which only a spiritual solution will release you of the obsession for that first drink, then you had better go after helping other people through the 12 steps. Like, what does he say? What are the words? It is absolute necessity, it is imperative, and it is vital to permanent recovery. You understand that? And here we got all these new people coming in here and saying, well, you can't really help people through the 12 steps until you become a master and learn them real good. You don't want to go out there and look like an idiot, because I got to tell you, I looked like an idiot for years. It must have been 5 years of sponsoring people before I actually started to zero in on the real steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I feel sorry for the guys that I worked with for those first, but I tell you what, one of the things that I say is that a failed attempt at helping somebody through the 12 steps is better than no attempt at all. If I never made any attempt whatsoever to help any of those guys, and when I didn't know much about the steps, then what would have been better? Not helping them at all? I don't think so. I made some attempt to help them. I reached out to them. But anyway, back to the reading. Begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. And that's where the reason that he's dwelling on this is what we call it from the doctor's opinion, the obsession that develops within our head for that first drink. We got the obsession for the first drink, and it always comes, and to me it always sounded like this. It's been like a week or two. It's been a while since your last one. I think you can do one and stop, maybe two. But I know I can't do one and stop. But somehow my brain goes, yeah, that's it. I can do one and stop this time and I'm looking around going, where in the hell did that come from? What are you, stupid? You've been going through this for year after year and you still have no defense. What happens? I go do one. Out of nowhere. There I am I remember I used to drive home. I'd drive my car home and then, in a blackout and not even remember any of it and go out and look out the window and go, oh shit, the car's in the driveway. Let me go see if it's dinged up. But that's the same kind of blackout that I was in. I consider it to be anyway when I ended up with a first drink in my hand all the time. It'd be like, man, what happened? How did I end up with a drink in my hand again? I know that this is year after year this was happening to me. And that's what he's talking about when he says, show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. And the reason he's bringing this up is because this is where AA comes in. AA comes in on the premise that after you've had that first drink, the 12 steps ain't going to do a damn thing for you. Your defense is going to come against the first drink. And he states that everything that happens after you've had that first drink is all academic. Whether you're saying you tried to drink just beer, so you didn't want to stay on the hard stuff, you just wanted to smoke a little doob or something, it doesn't matter what it is, it's all academic, it is irrelevant, it means nothing. Your defense must come against the first drink, and that's how AA does. AA is a program that states we try to get to the underlying causes and conditions of why this queer mental condition surrounding the first drink prevents us from functioning with the normal willpower. Anyway, don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. And be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusions. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can. If he is not too alcoholic. You see how he's saying that? And remember what we know, too, is alcoholism is progressive. One of the things that Bill Wilson also writes out in the chapter to wives is that he gives these 4 numbers of alcoholics, alcoholic number 1, alcoholic number 2, and he also states that almost all of us have progressed through these numbers. I started out as alcoholic number 1. I progressed into the condition of alcoholic number 2, and I have progressed over the years into the condition of alcoholic number 4, in which I am a hopeless variety now, and a hopeless variety in which only a spiritual experience will overcome that obsession for the first one. So he says, if he is not too alcoholic, but insists that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself. I'm going to open up I'll do a little more reading. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. And remember back in the 4th step, he calls it a spiritual malady. A spiritual malady. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose. Making a reference to most alcoholics at this time were only dealt with through the what today would be called the psych ward of the hospital. There was no the detoxes was like the county jail, and then they'd let you go, or they'd take you over to if you were like really bad, take you over to the hospital and tie you down. There were no detoxes, halfway houses, sober houses. All the things that we enjoy today were not there at that time. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose, but you may talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is an alcoholic, so much the better, even though your protege... So there's another phrase that was out before the sponsor thing. Your protege may not have entirely admitted his condition, meaning step 1, I'm guessing. He has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question, if he will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be atheist or agnostic, and this is one of my favorite one of my favorite examples that he uses. I got this circled here. That he's talking about and dealing with people who are atheist or agnostic. And to be honest with you, most people are. I think Bill writes in the chapter to the agnostic that 50% of all people who come into AA are either atheist or agnostic, and later become converts to, I believe there's something there. I don't know. It's not a religious thing or anything. It's to believe that there is a power greater than yourself idea. But what he's talking about here is he's going to be saying, don't just come right out with the spiritual thing, because the religious people have already tried that, and it's sort of like to pick yourself up, look at you bum, you're always like this, be a man, put some willpower to it. But what he's going to be getting at here is that what we do in AA is generally referred to by us as a spiritual solution to a spiritual malady, but what we also have is real-world descriptions of this. And one of the best descriptions I heard was my sponsor used to say, look, dummy, it's this easy, and AA is this simple. If you do good, you're going to feel good about who you are. And if you do bad, you're going to feel bad about who you are. What does an alcoholic do that feels bad about who he is? Alcohol makes us feel good, so we turn to alcohol. That's a simple way of describing the spiritual feature of our program. And even Bill writes in here. He writes, though these alcoholics knew they must help other people if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. That the whole reason for the whole thing that we do here in AA, helping other people and getting through all the first 11 steps to get to step 12, it all becomes secondary. And it is transcended by the happiness we find in giving of ourselves for others. In other words, you're going to be, it's a simple idea that fear is at the underlying cause and condition of the obsession that develops for the first drink, and how we combat that fear is on the premise that it's based in self, and that how we get out of self is by doing things for others and expecting nothing in return, because if you expect something in return for what you do, it cancels it out as a selfless act, and you will not get the benefits inside about feeling good about who you are by doing something for another person without unconditional love, is what the third step prayer says. Take away my difficulties, that victory over these difficulties will bear witness to those I would help of your love, your power, and your way of life. Which is a very simple idea, really. It really is. That doing things for other people is going to make you feel better about who you are, and you have to place no conditions on it, otherwise it won't count. And how we best become a person who does things for other people is by finding what keeps us from doing that. And the fourth step, anger, fear, and guilt, and applying the solutions to get rid of those things: forgiveness, amends, and faith. But anyway, back to what he's saying here. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes. And that's rooted in the Oxford groupers. The Oxford groups were early Christian people, but they didn't tell anybody what God to believe in. Provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he live by spiritual principles. And you can see how he's working through the steps here, like at the top of the page where he says he has not entirely admitted his condition, which would be a reference to he hasn't done the first step yet. And that was like the second step. Do you believe in God? Yes or no? And this is what he says here. When dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles. You see, that was the point that I was trying to make there. In dealing with a person who may get angry, and the wall will come down when you start telling them about spiritual stuff and God and love and caring for others and all this, bam, down comes the wall. Oh no, it's another one of those religious nut jobs going to try to save my soul, something along those lines. So what he's saying here is, when dealing with such a person, you had better use everyday language to describe spiritual principles, which is what I was referring to, which is that AA can be described in easy to understand everyday language. It doesn't have to involve the religious aspect. But anyway, we're going to open up the floor for open discussion. We got 20 minutes or so to anyone who would like to comment on what we've been reading here. This is helping others, working with others, the vital, absolute necessity, imperative, vital to permanent recovery. Anyone who would like to share on anything we've been reading tonight? We got plenty of time if you don't get long-winded like me. Nobody? I didn't.
The second sponsor, because it's real busy, and I can understand the steps again. But I was thinking about it earlier today when the first sponsor, Dave Kessler, told me, got to chase recovery. Got to chase it with passion, forget about all the girls, forget about all the high-paying jobs, chase recovery. So I was thinking about changing the sponsor. Wait a minute, I got to chase this recovery again. Because I was doing the same thing I did in the first year, where I put all my strength and my devotion to my recovery. I guess I'm just thinking about when I did my steps, I did it fairly fast. I mean, the guy's knowledgeable. He does very knowledgeable, experienced in the book. We did it like 2.5 months. But I don't know. I got to see the sponsor, one of those type of sponsors that you might want to do one step a month. Not to sit down and talk about it. From my understanding, the original founders were people of the age of years. So, and a lot of mistakes are it's just, I mean, the guy is great. The current sponsor I have is much better, more proactive than the last one. And I had a new sponsor and I couldn't go because we were just sitting here talking about the little thing like field condoms in Vietnam, which is fine, but that's not part of my recovery. But anyways.
Anybody have any questions or anything? Want to just ramble on? Something happened today you want to talk about?
Mark, my name's George. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, George.
I think it was the 8 o'clock. Somebody said, if you've got more than 3 sponsees, it's an ego thing. What? If you've got more than 3 sponsees, it's got to be an ego thing. And this is somebody with some time, and I don't want to mention any names. I don't remember really who it was. But I know my sponsor's got more than 3, and he's not no egotistical person at all, And I think the more, as long as you have time, the more sponsees, the better. The more love you can show. Like you taught us before. I don't know if it was in Akron or Cleveland or New York, when they walked in the door at the hospital, they were assigned a sponsee right away. Each newcomer was assigned a sponsee. I think, in my opinion, this is very important to sponsorship. I blame some of my relapse for not grabbing a sponsor. I did try a sponsee. I did try. I raised my hand there for a month or so, and I gave out some phone numbers, but nobody called, and I relapsed. But I'm not blaming it on that, But I think in one way or the other. You really have to be involved 100% in this program, and sponsorship is a big part of it. So, Chair, or comment.
You know, when somebody says something like that, my first question is, where is that in the book? Where'd you find that at? What page is that on? That shuts them up right away. Because those words, those phrases I was using, absolute necessity, imperative, vital to permanent recovery, those are in there. Oh, God. No comment. No comment for 1,000, Alex?
I have a question for you, but now that you're talking about a sponsor, having sponsors, I like, maybe I understood. I mean, I was speaking to this female sponsor the other day, and I asked her, how many sponsees do you have? She goes to me, 3. But before she told me that, actually, the question gave me the answer. She said, oh, I go to work, I go to school, I go to meetings, and she runs halfway houses. So I go to her, well, that's pretty good. You compared to, the availability of time when you're so busy with between the work, school, meeting, and running halfway houses. It's very difficult to have 5, 10, 12 sponsees. God, it's just impossible. You got to have a balance in it. So I don't know. I think I answered my own question. But to you, what would you think would be your amount of sponsee?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things that I learned from someone who was a lot smarter than me. And he said, I'll tell you what's not healthy and what is healthy. What is healthy is that one human being is trying to help another human being find a dependence and reliance upon a God of his understanding. What is not healthy is one human being dependent upon another human being for guidance and direction. When a sponsee calls a sponsor and says, look, I got a personal problem in my life, can you help me with it? And the sponsor goes, oh, I know exactly what you ought to do with your life. You see, I couldn't even run my own life a few months ago. I was sleeping in the dumpster back here, and now all of a sudden I know exactly what you ought to do with your personal life. What the hell? That is not healthy. But when someone says, I got a problem, you go, let me take you to the steps and show you exactly how the steps, and I'm going to show you what page it's on and how to apply what this step says to that problem that you are having to get you closer to a God of your understanding. That's healthy. No matter if you're working 15 people as sponsees or if you got one guy. Because I've seen that before. I've seen guys who literally follow one guy around like puppy dogs, like a little herd of puppies. And if that guy drinks, all 5 of them go out and drink. It's like, oh no, my God, drink, or something like that. So you wait it for yourself if you think that somebody's trying to help you find a God of your understanding, or if he's going to tell you how to deal with your personal problems. Because I went through that phase when I was sponsoring people where my sponsees would call me and I'd go, what the hell do I do? He's got a problem with his girlfriend. This guy's got a wife and 3 kids who's taking his business and his house, and I'd never had a house or a business or a wife and 3 kids, and I'm going to tell him what he ought to do with it? That's crazy, man. So I go, well, let me take you to the steps and show you how that ought to help you with, you understand? That there's a big difference in what you're saying, and for somebody to say that you ought to have any more than 3 is ego. To me, what that sounds like is somebody saying he's got 3 sponsees and 5 other guys asked him, and he said, I got 3 guys now, I can't work with you now. It's like an excuse. It's kind of like, I don't know other than to say, from my own experience, I always thought tough love did exist. That if somebody relapsed, I'd shut the door in their face and go, you relapse, bam, get away from me. Tough love, that's what he needed. But the truth of the matter was, it was my excuse for not having to do the hard work of having to sit down with that guy and say, so you relapsed, let's go over it and try to figure out where you went wrong. We'll go over each and every one of these steps until we find what happened and why did you relapse, where did you go wrong, and who wants to do that hard work? It's easier just to slam the door in their face and go, come back when you get ready, kid, bam. That's, how many times have I seen that? And I tell you, the truth of the matter is, when I ask myself that question, right away I know what the right answer is. 3 people or more is ego feeding? I think he's got 3 guys, and 5 other guys have asked him, and he told them, nope, I got 3. Any more than 3 is ego feeding. And it was his excuse for not having to work with 5 other people.
Yeah, if you have the time, it's fine. You have a full-time thing, but...
Well, tell him that.
But, like this female sponsor, between school, let's say, work, school, and halfway house, takes a lot of time. And I said, well, that's pretty bad. I thought at the moment, that's pretty cool. That's not bad at all. I mean, busy schedule you got, where you could fit another 5 sponsors in there?
Yeah, tell them that. Don't give them another excuse like anything more than 3 is for your ego. You know,
No, because you felt kind
I don't have the time.
that wasn't enough. And I said, but you're running a halfway house. You want to God do all these things and activities and relationships. You can't kill yourself.
That's a whole different question. It's a whole different idea than 3 or more is ego feeding. You know, when there is no ego feeding, if you're bringing them to God, but if you're telling them what to do with their life, that's ego feeding.
Exactly. As long as you do what? Straight out of the door. That's pretty cool, though.
Anybody else? Hey, Art.
My name's Arthur. I'm the author. They tell me in the program here after the 12 steps that I can only keep what I have like this. And it is a spiritual solution that I go by on these things. The principles are positive, and that's what got me to the level that I'm at today in a short 3 years. And I was taught not to say no to anything. All right? Anything positive I don't say no to in life is general. That's how I go by. And so my balance comes from my ego deflation. Everything that I was taught in this book here comes from not resisting this program, not resisting people that might be as sick as I was, because I was really, really sick when I came in. Somebody put their hands on me, and I ended up getting better as a result of the solution, which is the step process. So I have to keep reminding myself of that, so that when somebody does walk in, that I don't scare them off and they do check the door. Okay? I have to learn how to come down to their level and talk to them and say that, you know, maybe they'll hear just one word that might say. And I've got to keep that in the forefront of my head here, because as I work this process here and I work my life and all the things that come into it, the jobs and the halfway houses and buying homes and businesses and, you know, getting really busy today, what's the most important thing that got me? Was my recovery. So that's in the forefront of my head. So I learned not to say no to anything, no matter how many sponsors or how little sponsors I have, because they all come from one place anyway. That's why higher power put somebody in my life. That's a spiritual experience. And that's what I've perceived this and learned this. And when I try to change that or think anything other than that, then that's ego. And then it all washes away. So that's how I perceive these things today. When I think that I don't have enough time for somebody in Alcoholics Anonymous, then I need to take that for myself. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Arthur.
My name's Tom, I'm alcoholic.
Hey, Tom.
And I know when somebody's serious about recovery, because I work the first 3 steps with them. If they ask me, it's pretty easy. And you can tell when somebody's hit their bottom. And going through the first 3 steps is really simple. And if they have a desire to find out how to recover, I'll help them. You know, anybody. I mean, I usually only go through, they usually only go through the 4th step and then I don't see them again. That's usually what happens. But it's nice to see them. I sponsored, it's really cool, I sponsored a girl over at the 441 group. She's still sober and she's sponsoring people. It's really cool to see her doing that. And it's really nice seeing her. And I don't keep in touch with her. She doesn't call me. I don't think she's ever called me. But I work the steps with her all the way through, and it's really nice. But she never called me. I just work the steps. And I helped her with her inventory. I think she did the rest of them looking at with a woman. But I taught her how to do her inventory. And that's the main thing how to do. Learn how to do your inventory. Find out what's wrong with you. And that's what I'm really good at. Looking at you straight in the face, finding out what your inventory is. Helping you find out what your inventory is. And it's been 21 years, and I'm pretty good at it. People don't think so, but I'm pretty good at it. But I don't sponsor people, I guess. I don't have them as a list. But if they call me, I'll help them. I mean, you know what I mean? I give my number out to people who want to stay sober. I don't say I have a season. I get my number out. If people want to stay sober, they call me if they want help. So I guess I do. I don't know, does that make sense? I just help people. I like Bill and Bob, man. I help people stay sober. I don't. It's an ego thing. Spawn season is an ego thing. I don't have a little harem or whatever you call it. Not harem, but a little crew. It'd be nice to have a harem.
A clique.
I don't have a little clique or somebody wants to work stuff, I'll help them. But I got multiple sclerosis too. That's why I talk a little funny. I've learned, I just was diagnosed with that 10 months ago, so I'm learning to deal with that too. I'm good with steps. I think that's overall. Anyway, I'll stop with that.
You know, Dr. Bob's Nightmare at the beginning says that Dr. Bob had helped some 15,000 alcoholics in, let me see, crap, I don't want to misstate it, personal stories. Yeah, you had 15 years. Wait a minute. 5,000, I'm sorry. 5,000 alcoholics in 15 years. So you figure that out, and how many that is each week. That's probably like, I don't know, probably like 4 guys every week. Every single week. 5,000. And Dr. Silkworth, in AA Comes of Age, it says Dr. Silkworth had administered to 40,000 alcoholics. He took the program to them, too. Although he wasn't a real alcoholic, he helped people because he understood, you know. 40,000, of course, Dr. Silkworth lived a lot longer than Dr. Bob did. So, anyway, you figure that out. I mean, it says in the chapter of Vision for You, it is only a matter of willingness to achieve what it is that we have achieved, whether you want to or not. It's not like a willingness to stop drinking, because it's a whole different idea of the correct use of will and combating alcoholism is to surrender it up to God. But the correct use for the will and helping others is to go out and get it and ask God to back you up. You know, ask God to lead or whatever. But anyway, next week we'll pick up right there on 93 in the middle of the page there when dealing with such a person. Anybody have a burning desire or anything? All right, so we need a volunteer to read the Promises of the Ninth Step. Promises of the Ninth Step?
My name's Arthur.
Hey, Art.
We are getting statement about the stage for development. We'll be amazed before we were halfway through. We're going to know a new freedom, a new happiness. We will not reject the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which